всегда готов.
Всем привет!
Всем привет!
Добро пожаловать снова на наш канал.
Спасибо, что заглядываете и смотрите наши видео.
Сегодня у нас специальный выпуск. Мы находимся в гостях.
Да, как видите, нас не двое, а трое сегодня.
Да, у нас...
Как три мушкетера.
He doesn't speak Russian.
Not a bit.
We have a very special guest today. This guy is amazing and he has a bunch of stories, interesting facts. The most interesting fact, not the most one, but one of the most interesting facts about him is he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He asked me probably not to mention it, but we're gonna mention it anyway because I think it's awesome. It's a quite a
impressive.
Russian folks will like that. It goes really in line with judo, so you know.
So we're gonna talk about his very interesting and big collection of bourbon and whiskey. It's honestly quite impressive. Zach, welcome to the channel.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting us.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Sharing drinks and stories.
Hey, this is what the whiskey community is supposed to be about. It's not just about having something pretty that sits on the wall. It's about actually, drinking it. You're not supposed to have a museum. Museums are great and all, but you don't get much enjoyment out of them, in my opinion.
I agree. So to start off the conversation, we already had a little bit of talk
We were
prior,
having a good time so far.
but I'm honestly really impressed by the numbers and by how rare some of the bottles are. I've never seen anything like this.
I appreciate that.
To be honest, and to get a chance, Zach shared some rare bottles with us. We tasted some bourbon already.
We're gonna have some more.
We're probably gonna have some more. Thank you. But to start off, I just wanted to ask you, like, how did you get in that game?
So beginning of COVID, I started just kind of collecting whiskey a little bit. Once I found like some of the local drops, I started going to local drops. I was unemployed at the time, so I was like, I'm looking for a job, but like I can do without a job right now, so I'm gonna do the thing that makes me happy. And I was training jiu-jitsu a lot, I was working out a lot, doing some odds and ends work back and forth every now and again. But realistically, like I was just applying to jobs, seeing where that was gonna take me. So I'd go sit in bourbon lines in the morning. I'd just type away on my computer and be applying to jobs. And then eventually I ran into a guy who was like, hey, I've seen you at like 5 or 6 drops over the course of the last like 6-7 weeks. It's like, are you like wanting to get into this kind of seriously? I was like, yeah, I'm interested, like teach me. So he invited me to one of the Facebook groups. And then one Facebook group led to another Facebook group, then another Facebook group.
They always do.
And now I'm in like 30 Facebook groups, and it just got aggressively fast of like trying to learn the game and understand like, what's this, what's that, what are these different emojis, what does this mean, what does that mean, like what's the difference between bottled and bond and different proofs is. Absolutely.
It's a whole different language.
You start getting into different like understanding of like what's a bourbon, what's a rye, what's considered a high rye, and then you start breaking down those different pieces and trying to figure out what you actually like in whiskey. And then you start running into all those other pieces, and it just gets really interesting. Because you're like, oh, well, different distilleries can't be that different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it really is. It's just like, oh, well, like, all shoes are shoes, all whiskey's whiskey, but they're very different in how they work. Like, well, you prefer Adidas over Converse, and well, I approve Nike over this. And it just gets really interesting to start, like, running down that rabbit hole. Because that's how people see it. They're like, well, it's all alcohol, so it can't be that different, right? And then you just see the severity of how different some of it really is.
So really, you haven't been doing it that long, right?
I've only been doing it for about 4 years, so.
Well, you're already way surpassed since I've been doing it, probably 6, but not even remotely close to what you accomplished in doing. It's definitely very impressive.
Thank you.
And like you said, you had a mentor, right? Correct. Like kind of.
Not really. I got somebody that just invited me to a group.
Okay.
So he invited me to the group, and I was like, all right. So I started looking through the group, and I'd like message him and ask him questions, and sometimes he'd answer, and sometimes he wouldn't, because he was just like, he was doing the right thing in the bourbon community, right? He was trying to spread the word about what it is, but like, I'm not going to tell you all the ins and outs and odds and ends, which I'm like perfectly fine. he didn't gatekeep it, but he also wasn't like, here's everything. He didn't give me the answers. It was like, well, if you want to learn about it, here's the tools.
If you want to learn fishing, right?
He's like, here's the tools. I'm going to give you the tools to go learn. You want to go learn? We'll make it happen. But if you don't want to learn, like, you're probably going to waste a bunch of money and you're going to get in too deep too fast. I will say that's what happens with a lot of newer bourbon collectors. They get in and they find something they think they love, and then they buy way too much of it. And then they realize they have way too much of it, and then wife, girlfriend, children, your house catches on fire, which I know a guy that happened to.
And you know what else happened to me? I started buying stuff, and then later, once I tried different things, I realized like, why did I spend all this money when, you know, I should have kept it and buy something maybe more expensive and less stuff, but more what you like. So.
And like we were talking earlier, a lot of folks don't know what to pass on and what not to pass on, which gets really interesting in that realm because you get people that just see every allocated bottle and they buy every allocated bottle.
That happened to, or you know what else happens? You wait in line for 2 hours, and you get there like, man, I spent 2 hours. Like, I'm buying something, right?
Yeah, you're like, I might as well buy something.
I didn't get what I wanted, but I'm buying something definitely.
At one point, one of my friends had like 30 Weller Special Reserves. And I was like, you don't drink Weller Special Reserve. Like, yeah, but like, it's all I had. Like, it's all that was available. So, I'm going to buy it. All right, man. More power to you. But you said you wanted to go down the Van Winkle route. So, whether that wants to be Old Rip or Lot B,
can we talk about it, by the way?
Yeah, sure.
Little backstory, because we've talked about it briefly in one of the previous videos, but it was like briefly.
So a lot of people call those Pappies, and they're not. There's only 3 Pappy Van Winkles, and it's the 15, 20, and 23. And it gets misconstrued, and a lot of people are like, but it's Pappy Van Winkle, it's just the word.
I'm one of those guys.
And they go, but it says Van Winkle, and I go, correct, it says the word Van Winkle. But it's the Van Winkle line, not the Pappy Van Winkle line. That's why the other ones are called Pappy Van Winkle. So this is where we start running down that realm of like, this is called Van Winkle Lot B Special Reserve, and then you start getting into Old Rip Van Winkle. It's not a Pappy because it doesn't say the word Pappy on it. But they just call it that because they're like, it's Pappy 10, it's Pappy 12.
Right.
What a lot of people don't realize is most of the Van Winkle line is actually taken from a special spot in a rick house, and it is all the same mash bill.
But isn't like even Pappy same mash bill as well? Or?
Correct. It is all the same mash bill. And what generally happens is they bring the different barrels from that special place in the rick house. They put it in front of a panel of tasters, and they go, that's Pappy Van Winkle. That's not Pappy Van Winkle. And you're like, so it's up to subjectivity of people tasting it to be consistent, which is really intriguing. So it's where you start running down the rabbit hole of some of the bigger pieces of like, you look at like Benchmark 8. Benchmark 8 is the same exact mash bill as Bland's. One's at 4 years, one's at 6 to 7 years.
We actually like the 8, you know. Well,
8.
Mine was number 1, yours was foolproof.
2.
Yeah, something
but
like
yeah,
that.
like,
it was actually pretty
but
good.
Benchmark actually is a really good product.
Yeah.
But it's the same exact mash bill. Sometimes just in different parts of the rick, sometimes it's different flavor profiles. It's very interesting. But again, that's where like the craft your perfect bourbon thing, where it was like they basically try and just mimic the blend each time with Weller barrels. And you're like, interesting, it's not a different mash bill. It's not anything different because they only have their like 3 primary mash bills.
Right.
So what's the story behind it? Isn't it like where people voted for
So the craft your perfect bourbon, Buffalo Trace put out a survey, and they basically said, what are you looking for in a whiskey? Around what proof? What mash bill do you like? And then Buffalo Trace tried to mimic that. They got their distillers and blenders together, and they mixed a bunch of barrels, and they were like, this is what people were looking for, based off of survey results. And again, I've said it more times than not, Buffalo Trace is very good at their marketing schemes. They're very, very intelligent about how they've done things. It's like the Weller line. The Weller line used to only be 3. It was Weller 12, Weller Antique, and Weller Special Reserve. But now they've gone to Weller Full Proof, Weller CYPB, and Weller Single Barrel. So it's like very interesting about how they've expanded the product offering.
Or even, you know, like classic example, Blanton's.
Yeah,
You're like a kid collecting, you know, each horse and each letter.
But I gotta give it to them though. I mean, personally for me, Weller Full Proof came out
Yeah, well, foolproof is.
Well, their foolproof has some really, really good picks. I think the standard is better than the picks, in my opinion. I think if you get a fantastic pick, the pick is significantly better than the shelfer.
Okay.
But as the standard blend, I think the standard blend is actually better than most picks. I think a lot of people get the pick because it's a pick, it's special. Whereas like Eagle Rare picks are absolutely killer compared to the Eagle Rare Shelfer.
Very early we tried Eagle Rare pick, it was fantastic.
Yeah, because like Eagle Rare Shelfers, is still a good bottle, especially at like $50. Compared to some of the single barrels though, some of the single barrels are absolutely like mind-bogglingly good. And that's why earlier when you tried that, you're like, that shouldn't be an Eagle Rare store pick. I'm like, but it is. So it gets really fun with the different store picks. Because then you start going down like, this is where I like to have fun debates of like Weller Special Reserve. Weller Special Reserve store picks that are picked by Hardin Wheatley, like how close are they to this?
That's a master distiller right now.
What's your opinion?
So the proof point and flavor profile is different. When it comes to price point, I will always pick this before that.
Okay.
I can pay $100 to get one of these, or I can pay $500 to get one of these.
Oh yeah. Nice.
So when I can get 5 of these for the price of one of those, it's kind of hard to beat, especially because this is at 97 proof and this is 90 proof. Like 7 proof points aren't going to make that big of a difference. In my opinion.
It's interesting.
It's good learning experience for us too, to know what to be.
I think a lot of folks end up chasing labels. It's pretty, it's nice, it's this. It doesn't mean it's quality, right?
Oh yeah.
Or even presentation bottle, like I bought Willet pot still.
Yep.
For a bottle.
Yep.
Everybody,
Pass
everywhere I
on,
read,
yeah.
like it's horrible. Like with juice itself.
So that's again another like controversial bottle. Some people love it, some people hate it. I was one of the people that actually really enjoyed it.
Really?
But it always gone. Like
Yeah.
even though no one buys it,
still gets sold out.
it still gets sold out.
Oh yeah, but every bourbon gets sold out. That's the wild part. Anything that's semi-allocated disappears. It's asinine. When people are picking up Buffalo Trace every week because they can, I'm like, but why? And they're like, I don't know, I just have 60 Buffalo Trace sitting in my basement.
Well, now you also see like Wella Green or Buffalo
Yep.
Trace kind of sitting for a couple days.
That's because the
Still gets sold out,
the market's starting to get oversaturated though.
So what's your opinion? How long that craze gonna last?
I think it's going to last a lot longer than people realize because the more people get into whiskey, the more people start off low end and then build back up, right?
Okay.
Like,
Makes sense.
I think there was a point in time where whiskey sat on the shelf and then it completely disappeared. I mean, we call it 20 years ago, Blanton's was on the shelf and no one cared.
That's what I heard. I haven't seen it, but
Right. So like some of the decanters I've shown you, especially that example.
I didn't realize it was a decanter.
Yeah, so this is actually a decanter.
Oh, nice.
So like back in the 70s, 80s, they used to make decanters because people weren't buying bourbon. So they had to like incentivize folks to buy bourbon by going like, look, there's a pretty decanter you can put on your shelf. So like people would buy a bunch of knickknacks and do stuff like that and they would throw them up on their shelves.
That's pretty.
And they did like series of them. So like if we go upstairs, I'll be able to show you some more. I have some Wild Turkey decanters, some Eagle decanters.
I like your
The phone decanters
the
are
phone,
super cool.
Yeah,
I didn't realize.
But like
it
Jim
was-
Beam,
yeah.
Jim Beam's been doing that since like the 50s because whiskey just didn't sell. Then like late 90s, early 2000s, Pappy Van Winkle won Whiskey of the Year. And then after that, Pappy Van Winkle won Spirit of the Year. And basically it became like, if you aren't drinking Pappy Van Winkle, then you're not a gentleman. So then like, people started buying Pappy Van Winkle because Pappy Van Winkle used to sit on the shelf too. Because they were like, $100 for a whiskey, that's asinine. I'll never
I
pay
wish
that.
we could have those times
Stop
back.
on time, right?
But that's the reality. I have friends that have pictures from like early 2000s of like a shelf of Van Winkle, and you're just like, that's insane.
So what was your first bourbon you tried?
The very
Wow.
first bourbon I ever, when I was 16, first good bourbon that I ever had was probably Eagle Rare is what introduced me to actually like wanting to drink whiskey and actually get into the game. We were like at a fire and a buddy had a bottle and he was like, you would probably really like this. I know you like Jameson. And I was like, I do like Jameson. Like, yeah, like I'll try some whiskey. And I liked it and I was like, oh, this is different. Like the flavor profile is different. And I started to like appreciate flavor profile instead of like, we're drinking to get hammered. And it just got better because like the only bourbon I ever used to know was Jack Daniels. I was like, yeah, Jack Daniels, like it's whiskey. Like, that's cool. Like Jack and Coke, that's the only like it was a mixer. Never drank whiskey straight other than Jameson because I like taking shots of Jameson. But other than that, like I wasn't into bourbon until I was probably 22, 23-ish. And then I ran the route as soon as I started collecting. I went way deep, way fast. I started with probably 30 bottles.
I can tell.
Yeah, and this is a downsized collection. I've downsized more than once. So I moved from my first house to an apartment.
Downsize, you like drank it all?
I sold a lot. So like I've done multiple picks. So everything that's actually over on that barrel, I've done the pick of.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I've gotten to do a lot of picks, which has been really fun. There was
because you got popular in community. How did you?
No, sometimes you can just reach out. So like if we wanted to go pick a barrel from New Riff, we could literally be like, hey New Riff, we're interested in picking a barrel, and they would put us on the list, and then we get to go pick a barrel.
Huh.
But you got to pay for it. We should totally do it. We could do like a quarter barrel, because like a quarter barrel is like 60 bottles. But at the same time, you have to shuck out the money up front, and you have 60 people that can buy bottles. This is where it starts getting into that game, because then you have to trust the person that's going and picking it, right?
Right.
So like if you have 10 friends that want 5 bottles apiece, they have to trust you that you're going to pick a good whiskey. So it gets really fun.
Yeah, we should definitely try.
But like,
Try it, yeah.
oh, it's a great time. Like actually getting to go and pick a barrel, it's a blast. Because you get to actually like go look at the rick house. And it depends on the pick experience. Some pick experiences are super cool, and they're like, we're going to take you through the rick houses. We're going to go thief from the barrel. Thieving from the barrel is literally, they uncork it, they let you do it, and they just thief from the barrel. Makers let us thief from the barrel straight into our mouths. They were like, lay on the ground. We'll just thief it in your mouth. Oh, it was a blast. We did some really stupid things at Maker's Mark. We had a blast. But like New Riff, they'll walk you through their bottling facility. They'll take you over to their rick houses and show you there, and then they take you to the pick room.
That's where we were going to go,
We tried,
but they're sold out for now. Like all the tours.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can find a tour like a week ahead, it'll be easy.
But yeah, New Riff is an absolute blast, and we're very blessed to have such a nice distillery so close to us. Because most of the major distilleries, for those that aren't local to the area, are somewhere between like an hour and a half to 2 hours away.
Bardstown, probably.
Yeah, you're looking at Bardstown, you're looking at Frankfurt, you're looking at even deeper. You're looking you're looking at Georgetown. Because our two nearest distilleries are going to be New Riff over in Newport, and then we have Boone County, which is right off 75, 471. Yeah, one of the two. Either way.
One of the two.
Yeah.
Okay. Merged together.
Yes.
So
But realistically, like those are our nearest distilleries, and New Riff has done some fantastic whiskey for how short of a time they've been around. One of my favorite products that they did was they did a winter whiskey, which
yeah, they
I
dropped it
passed on
a
it,
few
yeah,
months
but-
ago, right?
I might still have a bottle. Maybe do I still have a bottle?
what's it hit me was
I do have a bottle.
like chocolate with like in description like
Chocolate oatmeal. It is very much so. Very much so. Of course. Winter whiskey is actually super fantastic. It was one of the first iterations that I actually had of their special releases, and I fell in love with them. They're killer. Like the way they described it to me is it's chocolate chip oatmeal.
Yes.
I was gonna say, yeah.
And it's very, very like resonant of those notes, both through nose and palate. You get a lot of cocoa through it, and it's really, really legitimately enjoyable. I think a lot of their special releases are really, really solid. They put out some hitters for only being in business for like 10 years.
If not less than that.
I think they're right. I think their own distillate is like starting to be 9-10 years, because they just released their first 8-year whiskey that is their own distillate.
Okay.
Which, if you haven't had it, it's actually really good. I was quite impressed with it. It's like $75. It's very on par for for being their own distillate.
$10 a year.
The hard part that you run into, and this is just my opinion, Buffalo Trace puts out a 10-year whiskey that's absolutely killer at 90 proof and for $50.
Well, it keeps going up. Eagle Rare last year was what, 35?
Yeah, and now it's 40.
45.
But at the same time, New Riff just put out an 8-year whiskey, which is 2 years less, and it's 75. So like, it's really hard to compete with someone like that. Now, I don't want to call them a craft distillery because they're not, but comparatively to Buffalo Trace.
Mhm.
They don't have nearly the rec room. They don't have nearly the capacity to be able to run and just keep pumping out whiskey.
Yeah.
But you got to think about how much stuff happened 10 years ago. New Riff wasn't around yet.
Yeah.
But Buffalo Trace has all this sitting in a warehouse that's been in the ricks for
Mhm.
10 years now, and they're just throwing it through the bottling line.
That's true. By the way, tour is coming.
Oh,
New Reef tour.
Oh, let's
yeah,
go.
we have to do it.
I mean,
If
It's
you,
close
guys
by,
actually,
yeah.
if you guys enjoy the
That's
tour
the
down
closest
there,
one.
we should actually look at trying to do a barrel pick.
I mean, I'd be happy.
Because the other thing is you could get like a Discord group up or something like that and make your own Discord page, and then you could do a barrel pick where you ship bottles to
Yeah, that's
the
what
folks.
what Brizzle
nice.
does.
Yes, he does. It's super cool.
That's what Brizzle does.
Yeah.
Because he's Patreon, I think, Discord, and then he does barrel picks regularly, and then people who are members, they get an access to those bottles first. So.
And like Bruzel does some really good stuff. I don't always agree with flavor profile and what he likes to pick up, but like
His favorite is OWA, by the way.
I know.
He keeps talking about it all
Everybody
the time.
talks about OWA. Bourbon junkies love OWA. Bruzel loves OWA. Everyone loves OWA. And I think it's garbage.
I don't like
Hot take. Everyone's gonna be mad at me. Good.
Yeah, I can say it's garbage, but differently.
I would say it's garbage.
It's too harsh.
I don't enjoy it for the price point. And that's the reality. For the price point comparatively to other near-term products, like, it's not good.
Right.
You take a Weller Special Reserve and people are chasing OWA, but you can pick up a Weller Special Reserve for $25. You're just like, I'm just going to take the cheaper one that tastes better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I started, actually, OWA was like $29. So that was no brainer.
Really?
Yes. It was $29.99 in Ohio. But lines were, you couldn't get it. We were getting case, a store. So first 6 people
That's
will get it.
wild.
Then next year it was, $40. Now it's $50.
But
Yeah.
that was like 10 years ago, right?
6, 7, somewhere.
You're saying you're old.
I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
about the longest line you've ever had to
And how long?
be in.
Yeah, how long did you wait?
So, longest line I waited in, or longest time I was at
Let's
a
do
release?
both.
Both.
Yeah, let's do both.
Longest line was 3.5 hours.
Okay, not too bad.
And that was to get a wristband and then have it called out. Longest release I was at for 16 hours.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That was the Four Roses distillery reopened the 20-year. So
Oh, okay.
I was
Worth it.
Oh, absolutely. I got there the night before at like 4 p.m. and started camping out. Pretty sure I had COVID at the time. And like it was, I think, 30 degrees outside. So I went and slept in my car and was literally shaking and sweating at the same time. Like I was hot, cold, and shaking. I was like, I'm gonna die here. Like
It's a legend.
it's all for whiskey. This is the dumbest thing I've ever done. I'm like, I've done some really stupid stuff. I was in the army and chose to go in the military and still sleep outside, and that was still smarter than going and sitting while having COVID outside. It's fine. Very casual.
Crazy
That's
stuff
a good
we do for
experience,
bourbon.
though. I mean,
It was. I picked up some really high-end bottles, and I'll be honest, that Four Roses 20 year is one of the best whiskeys I've tasted from them. It's a cocoa bomb, which you don't get from Four Roses a lot, so I was really, really impressed by that. That was actually the first bottle I opened in this house when I bought this house. That was my celebration bottle for this house. And that's something I don't know if you guys do, but I do it with my whiskey bottles. I generally try and relate them back to a memory. Someone did something really cool that I might do eventually. But he did a can in Kentucky, and every time he had a pour out of it, he had the memory written of why they were having a drink.
Oh.
So like he was celebrating like his brother-in-law having a child. He was talking about like it's his dad's birthday and like his grandfather passing, and like every single pour he had, he wrote it next to where he took it out of. And I thought that was really cool.
That's
to just
cool,
bring, it just brought it back to the reality of like why he was doing it.
And you can like have this bottle go generation to generation.
100% if you really want
It's a
to.
memory.
So I'm recently engaged, right? We're talking.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. We're talking about wedding bottles, right? And I haven't decided what it's going to be yet, but I'm really leaning towards a Michter's 20. So like if I do a Michter's 20 and I open that for my wedding, and let's say I share it with my groomsmen, and then at the end of the wedding we have 16 ounces of whiskey left. Well, I now have 16 ounces that I can drink for the next 16 years. I can have an ounce a year and celebrate our anniversary every year. So it'd be really cool. And then when we get to that point, do I buy another bottle or do I try and have a backup? And it gets just like, you can build the ideas of what you want to do with it. It can be more than just like, oh, it's whiskey. Like you can build the memories that go into it and make it important to you. I have a guy that he got his father's Blanton's death date. So when his dad passed away, he was able to get a bottle of Blanton's that had his death date on it. Every year on his passing anniversary, he has a pour of it. So for the next 25 years, he gets to remember his dad every year. And I was like, that's really thought-provoking. I know some people that have bought like birthday bottles for when they have their child born.
Right.
Well, I do not for my child, but I got the Old Forester birthday bottle, and I pour a little bit on my birthday.
That's fantastic.
Every year.
Yeah.
Like,
And then I've seen people that do it where they buy the birthday bottle of the year that their child's born, and then they share it with them on their 21st birthday.
Oh, that's
Which is
cool.
like super cool, because a lot of folks have just gotten to start doing that because birthday bourbon's only been around since the early 2000s. So like now folks are getting to that age, they can start sharing those bottles. So it's really cool to me. But it's just, it's the intriguing part that gets outside of like playing the secondary game and chasing allocated whiskey and goes deeper into the meanings. Like you mentioned me being a black belt earlier. William LaRue will always have a spot in my heart because that was the bottle I opened as my black belt bottle. So like I got my black belt, I opened a 2019 William LaRue, and I fell in love with that bottle. And I drank through multiple of them, which is a problem because they're expensive. But William LaRue will always be a spot in my heart just because of the memory that's tied to that. Because my black belt is probably the greatest accomplishment I have in my life. I worked really, really hard for it. But yeah, and I had about 14 years dedicated. It's very deeply meaningful to me to get some of those pieces. Like my dad, I've gotten him whiskey bottles from his birth year. My dad's 66, so like it's a lot harder to find those bottles, but you can find them. So it's really interesting how you can make whiskey about more than just like the whiskey itself and the memories that you can tie to it. Like you were talking about first whiskeys and pieces like that.
But you mentioned that you got your dad a bottle of his birthday, right? That brings me to my next question. Out of all the bottles that you currently own, what was the hardest to find bottle?
So I'll be honest, when it comes to whiskey, I don't hunt anything out. I kind of just let things appear. So like I just wait until I find something that I want and find a good deal on it, and then I buy it.
But maybe there's a story behind some bottle.
But there's really not, and that's what I'm getting at. So like even when I was looking for my William LaRue, like I knew ahead of time I wanted it before I got my black belt. And I just waited until I saw one at a reasonable price. I literally just sat back and was like, I'm just going to wait until it comes up. I don't hunt bottles. Believe it or not, with the collection I have, I'm relatively frugal about how I spend my money. So like when William LaRue's were going for $1,500, $1,600 a piece, I waited until one came up at $1,200. Well, that doesn't seem like a huge savings. $300 is $300, and then you take it across 300 bottles, it adds up really fast. I would say the hardest bottle that would be to replicate would be that bottle that I have that's pre-prohibition.
Dusty.
Yeah.
It's a pretty impressive bottle.
Yeah, the artisanship and the craftsmanship they had way back then is really impressive to me. The glasswork that they did and everything within the round, it's absolutely gorgeous. That bottle is from 1913, so it was distilled in 1913, bottled in 1929. That is, I think, a tenth of a pint. No, that's not a tenth of a pint. That is a quarter pint, right?
Yes, quarter.
Yeah,
I believe it's quarter.
But getting into that, but getting into that, you start looking at some of the pieces of back then, and whiskey was aged significantly longer back in the late 1800s into the 1900s. And then as Prohibition came around and hit, after Prohibition happened and they started releasing whiskey, they just started pumping whiskey out. Like you're getting 2-year-old whiskey, 3-year-old whiskey, 4-year-old whiskey.
Right.
They didn't care.
People couldn't wait, probably.
They just wanted to get drunk. They were just having a good time. And if you look into like the American versions of Prohibition, it's really interesting of why we fell in love with ice cream and where sundaes come from. So if you want to go do and run down a rabbit hole of like why Americans love ice cream, it's actually because of Prohibition. Yeah, so that's why like ice cream bars became a thing, because all the bars overnight had to figure out something to do, so they started selling ice cream.
Okay.
And then during World War II, that's why there was actually like boats that followed the American forces that strictly made ice cream.
Really?
Very legitimately.
Pretty cool.
So if you want to go do some research into that, it's really interesting because they weren't allowed to drink. So even when they were overseas, most times Americans didn't drink because it wasn't a part of our culture anymore. So we just didn't. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't normal for us to drink any longer. So the people that did drink over there, they got real hammered. Made a blast. But that would probably be the hardest bottle for me to replicate. I know some folks that have some pretty scary collections of Dusty's. Imagine my entire basement filled to the brim with just cases. And I mean, he still has things in the original boxes from like 1910, 1917,
Do
1920.
people open them or just
Kind of both. Kind of both. He has an entire case of the Antique Spirits Tavante, still in its original packaging, like unopened, still in the original wooden crate.
Wow.
Like mind-boggling things where you're like, how has that gone 100 years and no one just opened it for fun?
Right. What's the oldest bottle you've ever had?
The oldest bottle I've ever personally drank was from the 40s.
From the 40s.
From the 40s.
Did you like it?
Is it
I did enjoy
taste
it, actually.
different from current selections?
Did in the realm of like, it's gonna sound nasty, but it tasted almost like mildew, like how mildew smells and feels.
Right.
It tasted old, like you could just tell. I didn't even know the age when I got to taste it. I described it as almost rubber, like the flavor profile. Again, it wasn't necessarily like fantastically great, but it was just different. It didn't have your caramels, it didn't have your vanillas, it didn't have those sweet tones, even though it was still a bourbon. So it was still a corn whiskey. It was still made to the standard of bourbon
Is it
whiskey.
because of the age, or is it because it was made that way?
And
Or
that's
your
the
guess
question
is
you don't
mine.
know, exactly. Because that's where we get into some of the other things. Like I have some whiskeys from the 70s and 80s that are absolutely like mind-bogglingly delicious. Candy. Like straight candy. You're just like, this is so good. I could drink it and smell it all day. And then I have things from the 60s that you're like, why does that taste like jet fuel? And I'm like, that's 86 proof. And you're like, but are you serious? It's 86 proof? I'm like, yeah, that's 86 proof and 14 years old and it tastes like jet fuel. I've had some 86 proof whiskey that outmatches some of my barrel proof whiskeys, which is just baffling. It was awful. But to the point that you brought up earlier, this...
Oh yes, we were going to talk about it.
So this is a Michter's 20 mini. So in certain groups, they make custom minis. So this is a 1-to-1 replica of the bottle and barrel with the box of a Michter's 20. So someone took a Michter's 20 and refilled those bottles, and that is Michter's 20 in there.
Wow.
That's cool. And it's fantastic. This is a version of Seasoned Wood, and this is the Warehouse Sea Tornado Survivor.
Oh my gosh.
And they're literally
That's pretty cool.
literal 1-to-1 replicas.
Very cool.
Oh, it's super impressive. Like the things that people are able to accomplish, like these are all handmade by folks. Like super cool stuff people do. Some of the things they do are super impressive, but like she was mentioning, they are expensive. That Michter's 20 mini was $300.
Oh, wow.
Now, given
Well-
that is in 1.7 ounces of Michter's 20. So at the same time, are you really paying that much more than you would pay for the
Because
per
20
ounce?
is not that cheap either.
Yeah, when you're looking at a $4,500 bottle, this bottle's fantastic, by the way.
I don't know.
I do.
Even the
It's
pictures they
delicious.
made
You can
me
leave it
look
there.
so
So it's
good.
probably similar for all those funky bottles people put on, in Facebook groups where the labels are custom or like honey finish. Is it?
Yeah, those are different though. So like some of the honey finishes and like cherry finishes, some of those are home projects and some of
Okay.
those are, so like there's a group that I know that does a lot of finishing products. So you know the barrels that you can actually buy at home.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll do their own home finish. So like a discussion I've always had is if I ever won single barrel Saturday, the whole thing that Buffalo Trace does, right? If I ever won the single barrel select from them, I would immediately bring the barrel home because they let you take the barrel.
Okay.
I would take half of the cases and I would dump them back in the barrel. So I can continue to let the product age. And I would build my own infinity barrel. Because you start talking about like infinity bottles, right? Like
Oh yeah.
people do infinity bottles all the time. I want an infinity barrel. So like then I can just dump bottles of Eagle Rare in there every time that I'm like, that's a really good pick. Add it to the barrel. I know a guy that did an infinity barrel that every new whiskey that he tried, but he did an infinity barrel so anytime somebody brought a new whiskey over, they would taste the whiskey, and if they liked it, they would just dump it in the barrel additionally. So like he just had a 55-gallon barrel as a yes. So he basically took one of those, put it in his bar, and just put a cork in it so that he can keep taking it out every time he wants to add a bottle. And you can just keep
Interesting
feeding from the barrel.
concept.
How much is the barrel, by the way?
Depends on the barrel.
Like, what's the average?
Depends on the barrel. It's very different. Some are $6,000, some are $8,000, some are $15,000. It just depends on the product that you're getting. So like if we wanted to do a new riff barrel, I think it's like $12,000 for a full barrel, but I think your barrel yield is like 240-ish.
Okay.
So it depends on yield as well. Different places have different costs per barrels. Like Willet has done a lot of barrels where they like do charity auctions, right? So when the tornadoes hit through eastern Kentucky, they did a charity barrel, and I think it auctioned off at like $500,000. Right? Just an asinine amount of money.
Just pocket change. Right?
But at the same time,
So
if you have the money and you can donate to
Right.
a cause and a charity, then you can write it off on your taxes and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah,
Right.
right?
You can
And
have
then you
good memory and good whiskey, right?
correct, and then you get to share it with your friends. I think they did it with like a group of 12 people,
Okay.
if I recall. I think they did like 12 people were allowed to go. You could do you and 11 of your closest friends, and they did like a big group pick together, and it was like a great memory for them and their family and friends. So like,
One day.
One day.
yeah, if only I had
minutes.
if only I had $500,000 to throw at whiskey. So it gets really interesting, and like you said about the barrel pick process, like it's very different from distillery to distillery. Some distilleries are going to take super good care of you when they roll out the red carpet. They're going to wine and dine you. They're going to drive you to the bar. They're going to bring you back from the bar. They're going to take you to the barrel pick. They're going to give you 8 barrels to taste from. And then some places are like, all right, you're in the pick room.
Yeah.
Like, okay, and they're like, you get these 3 to taste from. Pick one. Oh, okay, I guess.
Yeah, that's not very exciting experience.
And it's
yeah.
not. And I think this is where you start looking at, it used to be an honor for a whiskey distillery to like invite you to come pick a barrel with them. Now, because barrel picks have gotten so popular, now it's a commodity. And now they're like, well, if you want to come pick a barrel.
A line of people.
Yeah, they're just like, you either get in the door and you pick a barrel or you get out.
Right.
I think when Wild Turkey invited one of my friends down, I think they had 12 barrels to pick from. And they just lined them up in a pick room where they just had whiskey already set out for them to just go through the barrels. And they went through the barrels one time and they were like, we're really hammered. And they're like, well, you gotta go through a second time to know which one you actually want. They had a good time, to say the least.
What was your best experience?
My best experience was Maker's Mark. Maker's Mark took very good care of us. I got to go on a pick with admins of a group that I help run, but we got to go off of the piggybacking of a restaurant. So we had a pretty large account with them, to say the least. So they took really good care of us. They took us out to a barbecue joint the night before. We went out to that barbecue joint and then took us to a bar afterwards. During the bar, they did a preliminary tasting. So the way that Maker's Mark does their barrel picks is they do staves, right? So all of their stuff is at cask strength. So what they do is they do 10 staves in each one of the barrels, and then they mix it appropriately to the point that you say that you want. So let's say you want 5 of this stave, 3 of that stave, and 2 of that stave. They'll do 50 mils of this, 30 milliliters of that, and then 20 milliliters of that. So it gives you the idea of what it should taste like. Now, is it going to be probably exactly? Probably not, but it's close enough for you to get the idea of what you're picking. So we got to do that because it was during COVID, and they were like, hey, we're only allowed to take 5 people additionally into the Rick. We know that you guys have 10 folks. We want to provide you something beforehand. So we got to do that there. Then the next morning, they picked us up at the hotel, let us drink on the van. We drank all the way down. They took us to lunch first. Then they gave us an entire distillery tour. And then they took us down to the Rick, and they took us down to the Rick houses. We got to thief from the barrels. Then they took us down to their actual picking room, and their picking room is absolutely stunning. They built a brand new state-of-the-art pick room, and it's just gorgeous.
And where's Maker's Mark?
They are down
By Lexington somewhere.
Yeah, they're on the east side of Lexington, I believe.
It's just down south from
Louisville.
Frankfurt.
Yeah, they're on the east side of Louisville, I think, right?
Maker's Mark?
Yeah, I thought they were on east side of Louisville.
Unless I'm mixing up. With
Yeah, because we went to Louisville for that pick. Yeah, Frankfurt is where Roses is.
Yes,
Yes.
like it's just down south from.
Yes.
Okay, then I mixed.
But yeah, Maker's was absolutely killer. I got to do a Bardstown pick. Bardstown was really cool. We did a 1792 foolproof pick with them, and the juice was stellar. We got We got to drink from the tail box. So the tail box is actually where the distillate comes out. So after it's been cooked and it boils to a certain temperature and it gets pressed out because it's hot enough to go up the pipe, it goes into the tail box, drops off of the pipe and actually into like an area where it then flows down into the containers. So they let us taste the white dog, which is the distillate that just came off the still. Yep. So they handed us red Solo cups, like full-size Solo cups. And I was like, so are we supposed to? I was like, so we're like supposed to like do a little? And he's like, you can do as much as you want. I was like, oh, because it's 100. I think it was 125 proof ish coming off of the still. I was like, okay. So I just put the whole Solo cup under and let it fill. And he kind of looked at me and he was like, we'll see if you do it. I chugged the whole thing. It was so good. It tasted dead on corn on the cob coming off the grill. It tasted like freshly roasted corn with butter and just deliciousness. And if I could have white dog like that every day of the week, I would be a happy man. Because I like smoke wagon stuff. I mean, I have some of their private barrels. The uncut unfiltered at like $85 is a little expensive in my opinion, but they're like 10, 11 year, 12 year picks are absolutely killer. Like, yeah, I have an 8 year pick here. I have a 12 year pick in the back. I think they're really good for the price point. And then they're doing their own distillate now, which is here or there. But again, it's like Willet. Willet actually does a lot of source juice and then they age it themselves and then bottle it. But a lot of folks are running away from their own distillate, which I don't understand why. Because I like Willet, but I think Willet's like a love-hate kind of thing. They have a pretty bottle.
I've never tried Willet.
We can change that. I've had just that, like I told you, just rye.
The small batch rye is very meh.
Yeah, I didn't like it either much.
How do you feel about higher proofs?
So I'm kind of borderline. Typically, I like to stay around 100.
Okay.
It's higher than
When you get above 120, are you not a fan?
Depends. Like some of the, no.
He's a fan of Weller.
1792.
Okay. Well, that's 114, so it's under
Some
120.
of some of Weller just can't take. Like I love Weller full proof.
Okay.
It's fantastic, but like Elijah Craig for me, it's.
I like
It's
Elijah
too
Craig. Elijah Craig, in my opinion.
The newer barrel proofs?
Yes.
Their older barrel proofs are absolutely stellar.
No, the taste is great. I just
For
can't
me,
take with
Elijah
you
Craig
so
is like one of my favorites, personally.
Well, we'll get into some
I
of
like
the...
Larceny as well.
Because I have some of the older barrel proofs that we can get into. I don't have the pirate bottles because I couldn't justify keeping them for the price point. Because they were like $500, $600, $700, $800 for the barrel proofs. They're the old pirate bottles. Because the old pirate bottles went for stupid money. But we can change the Willet game. That is 105.
No, I've seen that at party sauce and I passed on it because it was like $350, I think.
So that was, I think, their newest release of it. It was
But that's MSRP.
Yeah, I know, but I like, man, that's a lot of money for me.
So that's why a lot of people are hunting for it, Yeah.
They are fantastic, though.
Smells good.
So I actually have an 139 proofer in there, which is right under hazmat, and it's really good, but it's really hot.
But like, for example, like Smoke Wagon, I love it. Although it's,
I don't like Smoke Wagon. I mean, I can
it's
say
just like
I
sweet. I don't know.
I haven't
it's
tried a
easy.
lot of it. I've only tried.
I'll change your opinion on that tonight. But you did like what, the uncut, unfiltered, the younger, and whatever the other one is.
I've tried Halloween.
Oh,
Christmas.
It's all small
And then-
batch.
No,
And then what else?
You did
Uncut,
what did you
unfiltered.
bring?
It's the uncut,
No, you
unfiltered.
did try Uncut Unfiltered when we were.
But I didn't like it.
Hills.
Yeah, well,
Bitterness.
I mean,
Bitter.
Well, my first sip of it was like, I'm not sure, and then like sweetness started pouring in, and that aftertaste, I'm like, oh, I love it.
how do you say gorky in Russian?
Bitter.
Bitter.
Bitter, yes, in Russian.
To me, it's the other way around. To me, it's so sweet.
Yeah.
In English.
Russian, yeah.
Bitter. Yeah. I did not like the. I mean, unless you can change my. If you can change my mind, I mean.
I can make that happen.
Do you like Smoke Wagon?
I like their
certain products.
I like their private barrels. I think their standard line that they have out is, I think it meets criteria for a lot of folks. I think what they're doing is very interesting with being out in the Vegas desert, and they're putting a lot of heat behind their barrels, which causes a lot of angel share loss, and it changes the flavor profile of whiskey severely different to Kentucky bourbon. which is where you start getting into the like oddities, right? Kentucky bourbon and the valleys that you're dealing with have a lot of different flavor profiles because of it hitting the hundreds and highs, and it's also hitting the negatives of -5, -10, -20 at the end of the year. And you're like, it's just such a vast difference of change. Where Vegas, it's like, oh no, it's hot, like it's really hot, and then it gets cold, but like generally the temperature change isn't as badly. And especially because the rick houses out there maintain temperature really, really, really well because it's day to day. It's not like months at a time. It's day to day. It's 60 degrees at night and it's 105 during the day. Well, that rick house maintains heat for a lot of that time.
Now, this smoke wagon we sourced from MGP, correct? Until now. And last year we cleared warehouse.
They started doing a lot of their stuff. They're doing their own distillate. And that's why a lot of people are turning away from them, which I'm really surprised. I think that if you can take a product, source it, and blend it appropriately, you should probably be able to distill your own juice pretty well. But it's very similar to what happened with Boone County, where Boone County took some juice from other places, sourced it, put it in their warehouse, a lot of MGP juice, and like people love their MGP stuff, don't love their pot still. It's like, I'm not a big fan of Boone County. I've been told that some of the really, really old Boone County stuff, the 13-year, the 15-year picks are killer, but like, I'm not willing to spend $800 or $900 to try them.
Yeah, I've had only one, was like a high peak, barrel proof. I went to get, if you remember, we had the Blanton's Gold tickets, if you participated in that. Actually won Blanton's Gold on that. Well, my wife did.
It counts.
But it was my
Counts.
Father's Day present. She was like, yeah, we walked in the store. But anyway, a lady at that store, she was like, hey, look, there's a shelf. Buy something from there when I asked for a ticket.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't realize I didn't have to buy it. I'm like,
Right, sure, whatever.
I haven't tried it until I bought it.
I think what Boone County's trying to do is they're trying to replicate what they had. The water was different. The barrels were aged differently. The wood's different. Where are they getting their grain from? Where are they getting their corn from? How is the water being taken care of? Because that's one thing that like Maker's Mark did. Maker's Mark opened their own reservoir, and that's where they're pulling all of their water from, is from a fresh spring. But like a lot of distilleries are pumping water in from different limestone quarries, and it's like, how does that quarry get affected by changing environments? I'll make sure you get a chance to taste that cake in Kentucky because I want you to
Do you have one open?
Yeah.
Because I don't want you to open a bottle just
No, I
so
understand.
you know.
I want you to taste it so you can actually enjoy it before we get way too deep because that's going to happen tonight.
I definitely. I mean, would you mind sharing Van Winkle?
Oh, absolutely. I don't care about those.
Because I'd like to.
Lot
Have
B.
you had Van Winkle?
Lot B or Old Rip?
I haven't had
Lot B or Old Rip?
99% of what's here.
I've never had one before.
Okay. Yeah.
I've never had.
So, all right, hot take.
I can.
This is going to be super controversial, and people are going to get really mad in the comments. But this is just better OWA.
I've never tried it, but I don't like OWA.
I don't like OWA either. And when I tried this, my exact words were, "That's just less shitty OWA." And people got mad at me, and he was like, "That's no," and I was like, "Well, yeah, like it's very similar proof, and it's just 12 years. Like it's 95 proof compared to 107 proof, and this is 12 years, and that's like 7 to 9 years. So like."
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, sometimes I like green better than red.
I prefer
because red is harsh. To me, it's got better flavor, but it's so harsh.
But remember, we really enjoyed the CYP.
Yeah, we love
Really?
CYP.
Yes, I love it.
Oh, what? That is garbage. That is garbage
We
whiskey.
liked it.
We pretty much
Pour that motherfucker down the
Oh, let's tell the story what you passed on. So,
Oh, God.
No, don't tell that story.
Oh no! Please tell the story.
Now I
No,
gotta tell.
that story sucks.
That's why we gotta tell.
Does it make you
Hold
look
on,
like an ass?
hold on. All the people on Facebook made fun of me already.
Well,
now
we're
it's
gonna
his
make
turn
you
to
look-
make
I
fun
want
of
to
me.
make fun of you.
So I'm a big Mictors fan overall.
Oh, please
So-
tell me he had a chance at Mixers 20.
Yes, he did.
No.
Was it 25 or 20? I can't remember. Was it 20 or
It was
25? So
Was it bronze or was it silver?
I don't remember. I didn't care because I didn't have money.
But anyway, let's start from
But
the.
tell him.
We
He's
went
gonna kill me
to
right
Liquor
now.
Barn for that
He's gonna-
Mictis event where we did drawing was like 200
Some kind of
bracelets,
jokes.
and we were
He's
drawing
gonna
like
kill
his
me
dummy.
for sure.
and first prize was either 20 or 25. Yeah, I can remember. Mictis.
25. I think.
So we tried Weller. That's why I remembered. We tried Weller, some other stuff.
we tried
because
Caribou,
we had the
Weller, like a
Caribou,
bunch of other stuff.
all Foresters, barrel proof. So we waiting, finally drawing, and he's like, I never win anything. First number, guess who gets it? This guy.
But I
And,
passed him.
and he's shocked. He walks there and he goes to Master Distiller like, hey, so what's the prize?
Oh, were you at that Victor Celebration event?
No.
No,
Oh.
every year Liquor Barn does that drawing for me.
Oh, yeah.
Their master distiller came over
Yeah,
for
he was
bottle
signing
signing,
bottles,
and they
yeah.
had that raffle going on.
So,
So
only
you
12
could,
people.
like the first person,
What was the MSRP on it?
1900. 1900.
Oh, 19, yeah, 1800.
But I just didn't have money, like simply. I mean, I did not expect to win
Put it on a
anything.
fucking credit card!
I did not have like, even on the credit card, I did not, I was like in
I
so
would have given you
low,
mine!
I was in so low spot at that time, and he
came up
knows,
with
and he
shakes.
makes fun of me. I bought shanks.
I would have at least got 10-year bourbon or something.
I would have probably still made fun of you because I would have been like, you could immediately have
I know.
I understand. You literally could have been like, here's my
I
card, and
know.
some asshole would have been like, $4,000! You'd be like, here you go!
Yeah.
I
You
know
would have made
exactly
some
what you're
grin right
saying. I know exactly what you're saying, but I passed.
That was very funny.
So I've had Michter's 20 and I've had Michter's 25. In my opinion, Michter's 20 is better. That's
Because
my-
it's too oaky probably. 25.
I don't think that it's too oaky. It has really good flavor complexity, not as complex as 20 in my opinion. It does have a lot of oak forward, but it does bring some really good flavor profile on like the mid palate and back palate. But for the price point comparison, I just don't think it brings that much more punch to the table to drop another $2,000, $3,000. It's like, but like Michter's 20 is like really good. It's just like, is it worth double that though, or do I want 2 bottles of that? Like, I'll take 2 bottles of Michter's 20 over
That
taking
makes sense.
25.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
That's just my thought process.
And stop making fun of me. So in your
It's
opinion,
kinda
which
funny.
one? Which one? We got 2 on here.
You can try either. I don't care.
12 and 10. Which one you like more?
They both suck.
Like, but out of suckness.
If I had to pick one of the 2, I definitely prefer the Old Rip over the Lot B. Just in the realm of flavor profile, complexity, and what you're actually looking for. Again, Lot B to me is like
clean
directly in line with what OWA tastes like. So I don't love it, but again, you can try either one. I could, yeah, but I couldn't care less. Which
So
one.
I had a guy at work, and Dave Fox, if you're watching, we're talking about you. I know you are watching our videos. He said he tried packing, like I hated it.
So,
I haven't.
are you guys
but-
familiar with Somerset, the bar down in OTR?
Yes, that's what he had.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
So
exactly what he had.
Somerset was doing Whiskey Wednesdays last year or the year before, one of the 2.
Mhm. Yeah.
And they were doing some really cool releases. Like they did a Pappy Van Winkle 15 the one night, which was stellar. And it was like a 2-ounce pour for like $30. I was like, yeah, duh. So we went down there, and this year's Pappy Van Winkle was just okay. Like I thought for the proof at 107 proof, it was hot. Maybe it was because they just opened the bottle, but like it was hot for 107 proof.
Kind of like OVA itself. To me, it's hot
OVA.
and harsh.
I did not. Yeah.
I've had one bottle. I don't know if they
Remember
somehow
you-
mixed it up or something. You know,
Yeah.
because even same thing.
Remember
was
you gave me that
fantastic,
store
yeah.
pick?
Which store pick was it? Do you remember? That's not helpful. I have a lot.
Yeah,
of
I heard it.
No, I know you have.
Oh, when you had the sample bottles?
I
Yeah.
think it was just store pick. That's it. SB. But
Yeah,
you never mentioned.
What product was it?
OWA.
Oh yeah. I'm not a fan of OWA. Do you want to go with the King first? Do you want to go with Van Winkle?
I'm gonna go with food first, and
Okay.
then we'll come back to like the rest.
Oh,
Because we
You're like,
will,
we're getting too deep.
because we will get wasted. I promise you.
Oh, I have
man.
no
It-
problem with that. That sounds wonderful. That sounds like a good Friday night to me. So what you guys are drinking is Michter's 23A. It's the A batch. Allegedly, the A batch has a 14-year King Kentucky barrel in it, in the blend. That is why the A batch goes for disgusting money comparably. So like this year's secondary values on the 23s, 23A is going for somewhere around like 450-ish right now.
Wow.
But all the other 23 batches are going between like 325, 350. So for $100 more, you're paying for that. And in my
It smells so good.
and it's great. But like, is it $450 great? Like,
Well,
That's-
yeah. I mean, I see where you're going. Yeah, but it smells. It's like it
I'm
smells
also
like
gonna
leather,
get something
right?
different, so that doesn't help.
Mm-hmm.
Leather.
I don't know. Here, switch me.
Yours is different.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah, go ahead. That's a different whiskey.
Oh, that's different. I thought we all having the same.
No.
Which one's that?
What you're drinking or what I'm in my hand right now?
In my hand.
That's a Michter's Toasted Barrel Rye.
Mm. It smells like toasted barrel rye.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't care.
I like that one more. But this one's good too.
Oh wow, this is so good. And I do love Michter's, just regular small
That's-
batch.
that's
and it's
good.
like
Michter's has great product. I actually felt they're one of the few places that I actually like their rye. The problem is I like their older ryes, so that's from 2018.
it's so creamy to me when I
It's
try it.
delicious.
It's just like
They have some really solid ryes. I can't lie.
you know, like sometimes rice is like real grassy. I don't like those.
Yeah.
This is like creamy.
That's why I don't like Scotch. I don't want to taste the dirt of the earth.
Yes.
People are like, it's peat, it's delicious. I'm like, you like to eat dirt. Good for
Or
you.
dirty feet. That's what
Oh.
it is. to me. Like
But
stinky dirty
like
feet.
talking about Scotch, let's say a few words about like what's the difference
Yeah, like
between
the-
bourbon and
Oh, God.
Scotch. Because I mean, a lot of people don't.
Easiest way to explain it is one's made in Scotland, one's made in America.
Oh yeah, of course.
I'm just saying that's a true statement though, because bourbon can't be made outside of America.
Yes, that's true. By the
To
regulations.
some,
But
to some people, even not outside of Kentucky.
So American bourbon whiskey is defined as being minimum 4 years old
right.
or age stated under 4 years old,
Yes,
at
sir.
least 51% corn, and it has to be aged in new
White oak.
white
Or like
oak
barrels, yeah.
charred
Charred
barrels.
Yes.
It has to be charred, because some barrels are not charred. Some are toasted,
Yep.
which then it's not just like if they gently toast it, because like Michter's toasted barrel bourbon, it is a toasted barrel, but like it's still truly charred.
And so charred is when we quickly,
Yes.
burn it. And toasted when we slowly and
They
more
don't.
longer, or
Yeah,
is it-
they don't hit it as fast and hard, and they don't char it like super deeply. They give it a little bit more love and a little bit time and care into actually
They
charring.
expose it to the heat
Yes.
like longer.
Yes. So it's not just like fire.
Mhm.
They're like
It's more gentle.
We're
Yeah.
just gonna be gentle with the
And there are like 4 different stages of like.
I think there's considered 4 or 5 char levels depending on who you talk to and what distillery you're talking to, but I don't think there's I haven't done enough research or actually looked into that because I'll be honest, I don't care enough. I like to drink the whiskey and I like to learn the history of like why bourbon is what it is and some of those pieces. I don't know nearly enough of the chemistry of some of those pieces. But like when we start talking high rise or high malt or high barley, it's just like, oh, well now we're starting to get deeper than I care to go. But that's when you start finding out what you like, because you're like, well, I like high rise. You're like, oh, well, that makes life easy, because then you start chasing high rye whiskey. But not all high rye whiskeys are the same.
But then talking about Scotch, let's
I don't know
Oh,
nearly enough
like-
about Scotch. I just know that it's made in Scotland.
It's Scotland, but what
They
barrels
also
do they use?
reuse.
They reuse the bourbon.
They
Right.
can, and they'll reuse sherry barrels, and they'll reuse Oloroso barrels. They'll reuse a lot of different types of barrels.
But the whole idea
Reuse
is
their own too.
they-
Yes.
From-
And they do
Yeah.
like straight scotches as well, like single malt. Yep.
right. So that's like kind of the main.
But that's also when you get
Difference.
really interesting about a lot of bourbons when they get finished in other barrels. So like Angel's Envy is a prime company for that,
Port,
right?
yeah.
They
Yeah,
do a
we
lot of
started
port barrels.
innovating.
They do Oloroso barrels. They do Madeira barrels. They do some really interesting things.
Me personally, I've tried only like a couple of Angel's Envies.
Mhm.
I didn't like any of them.
I like regular. I mean, I like that port. It's.
I think the port is good for what it is.
It's a little too hot for me, too strong.
Hot?
Like
It's
the
not
ones,
at all.
at least the ones I've tried.
So I did buy for $20 barrel proof. to me, it's like, you know, the higher peak for like $80 was way better.
Well,
Way
so
better.
they
It
have
smells so good.
They have, I think I have the Oloroso Sherry down here. Yeah. So I have an Oloroso Sherry barrel, which this is absolutely killer.
Is it dry or bourbon?
I believe this is a bourbon. Yes, it's a bourbon barrel. It's a bourbon whiskey finished in Oloroso Sherry casks, and this is just. I doubted it very heavily, and then I didn't. When we look at the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, if you look at the inception of the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, there was only 3 to start, and then they added the others as they went. But when you start looking from the initial product line, they were aged longer because William LaRue Weller was always 19 years, I think, for the first 3 releases.
That's what I thought you told me
And
earlier,
then,
like 6.
and then it got younger, and then it got younger. Not William LaRue. William LaRue
yeah.
started 19, and now I think it's like 16-ish, somewhere in that range. But like Thomas Handy. I think Thomas Handy started off as an 8-year whiskey, and now it's a 6-year barrel-proof rye.
But it's industry trend altogether. It's not just them. It's
It
everybody.
is
And
an
it's-
industry trend.
We're making more money, you know.
They are, but it's
way
really.
less.
But what I'm saying is, when we look at the marketing aspect of that bottle,
Mhm.
that is just barrel-proof Sazerac rye
Mm-hmm.
at 6 years old. So the same baby Saz that you can pick up for $40,
Mm-hmm.
or you can go spend $500 on that.
And how old is regular Saz?
I think it's between 4 and 5 years.
Okay.
I don't think it's age stated.
And for full price, it's not bad actually.
It's $40.
Yeah.
But it is proof down, so like you're not getting barrel-proof whiskey, but at the same time, it's like.
Well, it depends also for what's the audience, right? Like I prefer about 100, right? If you love barrel proofs, it's a different story.
And if you actually listen to Elmer T. Lee ever talk, Elmer T. Lee actually did like a whole conversation regarding barrel proofs and how he thinks they should never sell barrel proofs ever. He did.
Have to watch that.
So you want to know how Elmer T. Lee actually enjoyed his whiskey? With soda. So Elmer T. Lee used to take Elmer T. Lee the whiskey, and he would pour it over some cubes, and then he would add lemon lime soda on top.
Oh my god.
He did not drink whiskey straight,
Well,
and he didn't like
everyone has a
barrel proofs.
preference.
So one of the best distillers, allegedly in the world, didn't like straight whiskey.
That's interesting.
It's very interesting.
And you know, we say there's no wrong way to.
There's no wrong way to
That's
enjoy
how
your
you
whiskey.
enjoy it, yeah.
Unless you like scotch. Absolutely.
Oh my god. Be careful.
I know. Just stay a little bit.
So to continue the conversation, let me ask you a question.
I should say this.
If it's not a secret, and I know you've told us this already, but what is the whole value of your collection?
So if everything was sealed, and I'm gonna clarify that because I have a lot open, right? If you look at my BTAC line, like most of my BTACs are open. You look straight down this William LaRue line, every single bottle of William LaRue is open because it's a different vintage. So again, I'm gonna put that with a really big asterisk. If everything was sealed, I would probably estimate my collection somewhere between 70, 80,000 US dollars, somewhere in that realm.
Crazy.
But again, not everything is sealed. So,
And I've seen people buy open bottles.
and
Easily.
a lot, I've actually bought a lot of open bottles. So that gold up top, that's actually a 1999 Takara Gold. I actually bought that sealed from a gentleman in Hawaii, and he shipped it to me. So I've gotten to try some really, really cool things just because I like to buy open bottles, or I'll buy decanters like we were talking about with the Eagle Rare earlier. And buying decanters is a risk because you don't know what the whiskey looks like. Is it clear? Is it hazy? Because like, here's a good example. That's slightly hazy, right? And a lot of people don't realize like that is still technically drinkable.
Is it because it was barrel proof and non-filtered?
So this is hazy because it probably saw a little bit too much sunlight and it probably oxidized. So there's a likelihood that this seal wasn't perfectly sealed, which caused it to oxidize. So if you let whiskey sit out for too long and get too much air, it oxidizes and it becomes very quickly non-drinkable.
Yeah.
So real quick question. So I store mine in the basement, but I do have, you know, those small narrow windows.
Yep.
If some sunlight gets on it,
Some
is
sunlight's
it great?
acceptable. It's like direct sunlight for
Okay.
for extended periods of time, right?
Yeah, mine is like, you know.
If it's for a year, whatever. But the thing is when you start looking at these, this bottle specifically is from 1977. If you let that bottle sit in the window for 15 years, like, it's probably undrinkable at that point. It's kind of like wine, and I know wine is more popular worldwide comparatively to the United States. But like turning your wine bottles, like that's a very important thing that you have to do to actually maintain your collections, or known as wetting the corks. Because if you don't wet the corks, then the cork gets bad, it deteriorates, and it'll go into the wine, which will actually cause the wine to go bad because now it has cork in the wine. So you start looking at some of the different things, like people ask about long-term collections when it comes to dusty bottles. Are you supposed to wet the corks? You're not supposed to wet the corks. How does this kind of alcohol differ from wine?
You ever had the cork broken in the bottle?
I've had tons of cork broken. So like that bottle that I opened earlier, because I decanted this literally today, it broke off in the bottle.
Uh-oh.
Which is fine, because it's now decanted in that, right there. So that's the juice that came out of that bottle. But like, if you look at how clear that is clear as day, perfect. But I've also opened bottles where it literally looks like muddy water. But that's the risk you take of opening dusties. Or at least opening decanters, rather. Because like, some of the dusties I have up here, we start looking at these, and these are perfectly gorgeous dark whiskey.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
It is. Like, and that is dark whiskey. Dark whiskey is just delicious.
Yes.
But like, that bottle's actually older than that, but that one's hazy and destroyed. How is it stored? What has it gone through?
Yeah, it's all depends on the different factors.
Correct. And like that Black Blanton's at the very top. That's from 1997. Before it was shipped to me, it was in really good condition. It got shipped to me from the Netherlands, and on its way over here, the top opened in transit. So it was 30,000 feet in the air, and cork opened. It was aerated from the time it was over the sea the entire time, and it showed up hazy. Like, very undrinkable. So like, it is what it is. But it's a cool collector's piece.
What do you do at this point? Do you get refund or?
So that individual refunded me a good chunk of my money. He was like, hey, like, I understand you're upset, blah, blah, blah. I was okay with that. I was like, it was more of a collector's piece. I was probably never going to open the bottle. It was just because it was from 1997. It was literally like, oh, it's my birth year. I want the bottle. I haven't seen one. That's a reasonable price. He took pretty good care of me, though, so I'm not too upset about it.
Cool.
So for Angel's Envy, how do you feel about this? Have you had it yet?
That was very
It's actually
interesting
pretty
and
good.
different, but it's really good too.
Mhm.
We've tried so many bourbons tonight. I would say almost too many.
There's never too many
We're gonna
bourbons.
slow down. I still gotta try King of Kentucky.
You could probably save that for next time, so you can actually have a fresh palate.
Yeah, I'd say so because
I
at this
agree.
point we're like, palate gets mixed up. We're like,
I'm
not-
not.
I
I'm
mean-
doing great. I'm having a blast.
I mean, so far,
No, I'm having a blast.
all I've tried is like awesome. I mean,
No, everything was fantastic. So
All
I
bangers.
can say everything
All
we tried.
bangers.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty much good stopping point for now. I mean, we should continue.
It's because you're running out of storage.
Right out of storage. That's a good one. Yeah, but yeah, Zach, thanks a lot, man.
It's a pleasure, gentlemen.
It was a really interesting journey and video.
Learned a lot from you, honestly, even in this short time.
Appreciate the friendship.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah. We didn't even say subscribe.
You're like fucking whiskey. Yeah.
So the question was if having a hobby like collecting bourbon interferes with sports and having black belt in jiu-jitsu.
No. So the only time that I ever had to take a break from whiskey is when I decided to do like an 8-week fitness challenge. I completely cut alcohol whatsoever, so I wasn't drinking any spirits, no beer, no wine, no seltzers, no anything. So bourbon was also out of the question, obviously. But no, I don't have issues with it. I probably actually only drink 1 to 2 times a week. Generally, unless I'm getting together with friends and other people that I want to be around, where we're like actually partying and having a good time, drinking a lot of whiskey. Generally, I'm only drinking probably 4 to 5 ounces of whiskey, actually. So like, I might have such a large collection, but like compared to most people that have collections, I don't drink that often. I know I have a couple of friends that they drink every day, and their lifestyle definitely reflects that they drink
So you don't have like daily. You just kind of like.
I usually will have a pour throughout the week. One during like Monday, Tuesday, and then as we get into the weekend, I'll have something like Friday, Saturday. But like I don't really drink throughout the week. Usually I'm focused on other things, whether it's work, or working out, or going to the gym, and I just don't have a desire to drink throughout the week. I'll partake in cigars from time to time too, and usually those go hand in hand. So like if we decide to not go to jiu-jitsu one night because she had a rough day at work or I had a rough day at work, we'll kind of hang out, have a cigar, have a pour or two, and then that's our night because, you know, instead of going to the gym and going working out, we just decompress, hang out at home, and spend some time together.